You know, Samia, this is not the first time we do this.
I know. It's always fun to do it with you.
And I remember when you came for my first exhibition, and you helped me with the framing.
With the prices, not with the framing.
No, with the framing.
And maybe also
we
with
were
the
all
framing.
improvising all the frames for the show, and it was about women and memory.
Exactly. And it was a beautiful exhibition. And I remember it being sold out first night, even though they were very expensive. And I was sort of baffled by the fact that you insisted. I want to actually congratulate you on yet another wonderful show. And I'm sure it's going to be a great success. And I wanted to ask you why it is that you decided to bring selected works from these three more recent exhibitions of yours together in this new show at the gallery at
I think it came after discussion with the team at Townhouse, Malika, Gabby, and Insan, and you were there also. We had a meeting on Zoom, and I thought that would be appropriate because I have not had an exhibition at the Third Line for a very long time, and they haven't seen the works that I've done in more recent years. And I feel that even though, you know, like I've always been interested in the interior, in the inside, in that which deals with the spiritual, I feel that the more recent years I tended to go even further. So I thought that the three series, When Dreams Come, Call for Silence, and then and the healing devices, and then the our Black Thread. I thought that these came during a time when I felt like I needed to withdraw and retreat, and this has to do with the context, of course. You know, I did go through a period of long illness, and you know, like when you're in that period, you start to reflect on your life, the meaning of life, what you want to do, and also death, you know, the return to home. And I wanted to do work that was effortless, maybe tedious and labor intensive, but effortless in the sense that the mind is not there so much as the hand. You know, the hand follows, you know, maybe specific emotions that I'm not aware of, and I just wanted to let it out.
And you feel that these three shows in particular represent this juncture, therefore, in your
that period, of course, spans, you know, from 2018 to because there's also the show that I did at the Third Line, which is entitled Still, and that sort of, you know, also was the beginning. It was the beginning of experimenting with something more abstract, something that doesn't deal so much or directly with the outside, you know, world. And I feel that not just my illness, but then you had COVID, and at the same time, you know, my mother was ill for 3 years, and I felt that this was a time to go more deeper, gaze more inside, gazing inward.
Inward, definitely. Could you talk to us about the inspiration behind each show, because they obviously span, as you said, a certain period, and they're inspired by different things, emotions, moments.
I can start. Sorry.
Yeah, and then place them in the context of your own artistic and emotive, psychological trajectory.
I think I could start with the When Dreams Call for Silence, and that was the idea began not with the title, but the idea began with the meeting of a group of artists here in Egypt, and we felt very much that we became isolated, and that was in 2015, 2014. Things have, we've had a period of, let's say, change, transition, and then we've had political changes, and that affected everybody and confused everybody. And we felt that we didn't know where we're going as cultural practitioners and artists. And so we met once every 2 weeks, and we talked. And we talked very much about the phoenix that grows out of the ashes. So there was all the idea of disintegration, death, crisis, and then how do you come out of that? And so there was that aspect, that optimistic aspect, that we wanted to get out of that, and that through our creative work we could, do something. And so everybody, I said, okay, let's work with the idea of this rising from the ashes being death, or no activity, stillness, whatever. And then I started with the cemeteries in my work. So there were scenes from cemeteries, there were scenes of this bodily disintegration, scenes of procession going from one phase to another, that idea of traversing the journey and so on. And these are reflected in the series, in the works Dreams Call for Silence. There's a lot about grappling with stillness, the idea of how difficult it is to be still, because we're so addicted to activity and doing things and looking at things and so on. And how do we come to this? How do we do it? And of course, I've been always interested in a spiritual path, and I know that you can't do this with any effort. It has to come effortlessly.
And how about the other shows?
The other shows, like the healing devices and the healing devices came, I think, with COVID. But the idea, again, these things come through a process also, like they don't come suddenly. You work on something, and then it leads, and something then leads to another. So I was working on a show with Art d'Egypte at the Muez Hospital. It's a very old hospital, very huge hospital, very famous hospital. And I was asked to do a work in the hospital. So I thought, okay, that was in 2019, and I thought I have to do something that deals with healing, because it's a hospital, and
history.
And history, exactly, and I loved it because here I am, a Mamluk historian, a cultural historian, interested in how people, everyday culture reflected itself, and I thought, okay, I want to look at medicinal manuscripts, and at the time, of course, it was all based on herbs, and I was very much interested in herbal medicine after my illness, because I thought, I wasn't very comfortable with, mainstream chemical
Drugs.
pharmaceutical drugs. And so I delved into it's amazing. And I even, my research on the internet led me to find out a prescription, a herbal prescription for an illness, that took, and the doctor was working at Al Muazz Hospital.
Wow.
So, it really got me into, the whole idea of using herbs as for healing. And I constructed a whole cabinet with books and, herbs, and magic, also
As an
magical
installation,
dolls,
you mean?
as an installation, yes. And then I had an empty bed, in one room. And anyway, so, I constructed this installation in the hospital of Al Muazz. And as I was doing this, I discovered Al-Jazari, Ismail Al-Jazari, who's a 12th century engineer, polymath, amazing genius. And I discovered his manuscript on mechanical devices. He's an amazing illustrator, and I think he's also a fantastic artist. And he, drew all the mechanical devices that would make people comfortable in their everyday life. And of course, what attracted me was the beauty, and the idea of, how he would construct or imagine, devices that would transport water from one place to another, and fountains, and so on, and then these two things came together, like the herbal medicine manuscripts, the mechanical devices. I thought, okay, I want to do something inspired by his illustrations, but also that would be like healing, and that was during COVID. And close to COVID. I mean, things progress slowly, and so I started. How am I going to do that? And so I destroyed some of my paintings that I didn't like really, and again, the whole idea of destruction.
And regeneration.
And something new comes out, rise from the ashes and so on. And so, the healing devices were such, because as I was doing them, I really felt I was healing. I loved doing them. I loved cutting the old pieces that I didn't want, that I thought they need to a new life.
Yeah.
And
afterlife.
An afterlife. So yes, that's the idea of the healing devices. And then came again, because COVID was a long time, and then my mother was ill for a long time, and then I don't know how all the idea of using thread. I think I used previously in my work. I mean, it appeared previously, but randomly. But this time, we were at home. my mother was ill, I was in the domestic, space all the time, or most of the time, and previously I had, because you know me, I like to recycle things, and I used to go to the gym at the Hilton hotel and drink very nice tea, and the tea bags were made of fabric, and like transparent fabric. Maybe it's synthetic, I don't know. Anyway, like I love the fabric because my mother is a seamstress. I've grown up with a lot of fabric in the house, and so I basically collected the fabric every day over 1-2 years. I can't remember.
You went to the Hilton every day to drink tea to collect bags?
No, I didn't. I used to go at least 3 times a day to the gym. I used to swim and then go to the gym and then drink my tea and then take a few tea bags at home. And so then, I had these things, and I don't know how the idea came actually. It just came. And I started...
So you were collecting them without necessarily knowing what you were going to do?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Okay.
And so for the thread series, I started first of all with the tea bags, and they were very small. So I said, I want effortless. I want to do something with effort. So I wanted to let go, to just work my hands with the thread and the needle. And it was such a great pleasure. I didn't know that my mother, loved doing that, because she never talked to me about it. And I started, I used only black thread. That's why at the beginning, most of the works were in black, but, and then sometimes I just said, let's use red. But I just used the black cotton thread, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just started to thread these tea bags, and they were abstract. They were just tracing thoughts, lines, emotions, I don't know. And they were, again, like the idea of working with the hands to heal. And it was very convenient because I could do it at home.
You, in black thread in particular, were simply letting the hand work. But is that true? Because, a lot of your work also depends on repetition, repetitious movements that are also meditative. So you say that this was a way to sort of liberate the mind and let the hand do the work. But it seems to me that this is also a manifestation or a re-manifestation of this meditative mode that is very characteristic of your work throughout.
But it doesn't contradict. Yes, I mean, I remember when I used to sit every morning and repeat a specific phrase, for hours. And I think that it's very similar to that, but without the meaning, the phrase had meaning, and in many of the spiritual traditions, you're asked to repeat specific words to, quieten the mind, and but this had no words, so they were simply the hand, threading through fabric and letting it do what I did. I never knew how these small especially the small ones. How these small tea bags, you know, the fabric, how they were going to turn out. I never knew. I just, you start and then you let go.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most fun part of it.
Okay. You've relied quite consistently on your academic background as a cultural historian. Could you talk a little bit about how this aspect or this characteristic of your work manifests itself in the pieces that are on display at Third Line?
In the pieces on display at Third Line, well, I mean, let me just start more generally. I remember, for example, when I was a graduate student, and I wasn't like particularly, feminist or anything. My mother, though, always made me aware that she never got her chance to do what she wants in life, which was to go to university and become a physician, a doctor, a pediatrician. She wanted to be, and she always wanted me to, continue my education and get the highest degree and so on. And that's what I did. I went and I got a doctorate. And in one of my seminars, my history seminars, we were reading, medieval texts, and the insisting question, given my mother's background and how she, conditioned me, was, where are the women in these historical accounts? I want to see the women. And my first paper as a graduate student was using a biographical dictionary that Alserkal wrote. He was a 16th century historian, about women. So I discovered, Sakhawi's biography of women, and I did a whole study on that. Mm. And so unconsciously, I think not so consciously, the issue of gender comes in my work. And of course, working with thread, what more do you want? I mean, there's a huge tradition that has been neglected and not given enough appreciation of all these women in history who have spent a lot of their time weaving, sewing, embroidering, stitching, and so on. I mean, women did the designs and the weaving of the most beautiful carpets in the world. Mm. And we never
and they still do.
And they still do, and we never give them the credit. And we call it craft, but they put their souls in it. So I think our black thread definitely, evokes that history. And but particularly my mother's legacy, my mother's what I learned from my mother, even though she never really taught me how to sew. But I watched her for hours, sewing,
Okay, maybe one final question. In almost all of your earlier shows, we see you repurposing objects from the city, from outside. It's really in the public sort of sphere. But with these three particular shows, these found objects seem to be very different from what we are used to from Huda Lutfi, who is the Cairo maverick who goes around finding stuff and reimagining it and repurposing it, giving it new meanings. Can you talk a little bit about this shift in found objects in the three shows?
Yeah. Let me see. When dreams call for silence, I mean, I was looking for, was inside. I mean, maybe because it was all about psychological emotions, mental thoughts, and so on. I didn't need to, go outside. Although there is a piece that, actually there are a few pieces that I have used. The piece entitled Broken Bodies, which is made up of, dolls that I, collected over the years, and I thought that, like this idea of bodies disintegrating is very important in the spiritual path or in any life path. One has to recognize that the body is deteriorates eventually, and one has to face that, and then maybe reflect on that. I don't want to give any answers, but question this and find out, where does that lead you. I also used a mannequin, again, a mutilated mannequin without a face in that body of work, When Dreams Call for Silence, because again, like the idea of no thoughts, and a body without a face, meaning maybe like going in the darkness, in that deep darkness, of where we came from, and that we don't know anything of, the unknown. That reflected this. But most of the works were paintings and collages, and portraits sometimes, because of course the faces are very important. So it's because, like in these series, I go inward. Also the same thing with the threads, the black thread series. I used car filters because I could find them downstairs. I live on a street where a lot of mechanics fix cars, so I always find these car filters, actually on the side road when I go out. So I love the texture of it, and then each car has a different color filter, and they're not the same. They're not the same sizes. So I used them before also, but more prominently in our black thread, and I wanted to experiment, how to sew on these car filters. And then I already talked about the tea bags, like these were also found. Then the healing devices, I had these paintings, and I felt like cutting them out and making something new out of them.
Okay, let's talk about your preoccupation with healing that seems to permeate the works on display at Third Line, but that has also sort of preoccupied you from the very, very beginning.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Yes, actually you reminded me when we were talking about whether you want to do an interview with me. You said, but Huda, like you started with this all, with doing these collages that you did because you were it was a cathartic, practice for you. And yes, it's true. My first collage was when I was after I had a surgery, again, a serious surgery, which I survived, thank God, and losing, an important organ in my body, the creative organ. And I remember the pain was so severe that I couldn't do any academic reading, like I couldn't do research. I remember I was doing research actually on a book on dreams, and I couldn't get into any tedious, serious, academic work. And I was in the habit of already, of collecting a lot of photographs of artists' works, postcards, magazines, catalogs, and so on. And so I had all these images. And a friend of mine had sent me this postcard by a Japanese artist of a woman, lying, and I don't know how it happened. I just sat at my desk. I cut that postcard, the body of the woman lying, and I started doing a collage, and it was called A Woman Cut in Half. And so the whole, when I started doing collage, it was really to forget about the pain, to just do something to forget about the pain. So yeah, it started like that. So yes, it's I think for all artists, art is a healing practice. It's you forget yourself, the burden of the ego with all its anxieties and fears and desires and all that, is forgotten when you immerse yourself in a work of art.
But also
whether it's painting or anything.
Yeah. There's also this nagging need or desire to be whole again. Yeah, and yeah, I see this in the healing devices, where all of the cuttings from which is a sort of self-inflicted bricolage, basically,
Yes.
in which you bring the work that you had shredded to come together and be whole again, and that search for wholeness, therefore, it seems to also be very prominent. Is it a desire or is it a reality?
What do you mean a reality?
In the sense of
that I feel
said,
whole.
Yeah, I mean this constant search for wholeness that manifests itself in your artistic practices. Does it relieve some of the angst, the existential angst,
Yes.
that seems to come across in a lot of what you have been talking about?
Probably, yes. I can only say that I feel good when I work on an art piece. Yes, I think it's more, the excitement is that I get an idea. I don't know where it comes from. Probably accumulation of experiences, and then you're thinking about something, and then suddenly it comes, and then you start doing it,
yeah.
and I think that's I like that. Yes, I don't know if it makes me whole. I don't know.
Good. It's good to keep it open, otherwise we won't get more challenging and inspiring shows. Thank you, Huda.
Thank you.